So, apologies straight up, this is obviously going to be a very long video. I think there might be about 40. We'll see when we're done. And obviously it's just not all of the, the Amouages, don't have them all. This is just 40 I have bottles and samples of that I've been wearing and get to know them. There may be a part 3. I am obviously interested in trying the Pure Parfum versions and the new ones out and that. So I may well order some samples and some of the others that are not on this list. Although Amouage is not great for samples. You have to spend, there's a minimum spend, and yeah, and then obviously they don't have many samples on the website, to be honest, because things get discontinued and they're not in stock, etc. Well, yeah, this is just the ones I've got and the ones I've sniffed and the ones I've been through. Doesn't need to be a particularly long intro. It's not in any order of preference or anything like that. The easiest way to do it was alphabetical order, so we'll get cracked on. So I think alphabetically this is going to be the first, and ironically it's probably the one I've tried so far that I'm least fond of, but it's all subjective, and it kind of shows that this video is just, it's all of them. It, we can't love everything, can we? Anyway, that's Blossom Love. Now then, this opens with, an absolutely, utterly ginormous nuclear sweet plastic rose and a swirl of almond. I imagine it's a bit of the almond giving it that plasticiness. The amaretto note is hiding in there and is quite nice, with a little touch of sharpness to kind of balance it a little. Also get like a strange burnt tire melting condom to me kind of vibe, which is I suppose makes it very Amouage-y. But the sweetness is just, it's massive. It's like mega sweet, and it's very much in your face. And as it develops, the sweetness, I'd say, even gets bigger. Really weirdly, in the air you do get a little kind of sweet green lilac, which isn't there at all, like in the notes and that, and it's weird, but it adds a little bit of pleasantness to it. It does get a little brown sugary kind of sticky as it, you go into a couple of hours, and it dries down a little orangey still, with a slight kind of latex heavy sweetness. Now, I can see why people love this. You've got to love sweet fragrances, but you've got to love the sweet and the odd, which is Amouage. Don't get me wrong, I'm not slating the fragrance, it's a good fragrance, but for me, hell no. It's just too much. I like the ones that kind of teeter on the edge of being too sweet. This gets on the fence and runs a mile over it and flashes at you. It's so damn nuclear. It puts, it gives Amouage Interlude a run for its money. It's so big, and with the sweetness, just not for me. But if you like a big sweet kind of and somewhat unusual one, then this is a good one for you. So that was Blossom Love. Bracken Woman is next, and this is one I was quite excited about because I have never heard literally anything about this, or Bracken Man for that matter. One of the kind of mid-older ones, not that old, but it's definitely kind of not one of the more modern ones, and yeah, not influencer friendly clearly, so I was interested in this one. So it opens with a sharp, dense, bitter greenness, maybe from the fern, with a strong narcissus and chamomile. Again, giving that kind of aromatic greenness, greeny yellowness that chamomile has about it. The leather adds another layer of green texture in there. The berries then kind of add this foresty sweetness. It is like walking through a forest, like a dense Nordic, really green verdant forest with berry sweetness, reds and blues. The narcissus stays with a beautiful kind of greeny yellow too. About an hour, the narcissus fades back, and the green takes over more trees, and the patchouli and the vetiver come through with a touch more, little bit of muskiness, but it's green. The sweetness from the berries does linger on, like I say. The leather and the dark birch grow through it with a little smokiness, and you still get the slight aromatic greenness of the chamomile in there. So it's fresh but a dense dark green forest. The dry down is more of a dark mossy green, still with a bit of evergreen leaves and trees all around you. And it's a little like tomato leafy mixing with all the leaves. It's got that kind of, you know, that very distinctive bitter greenness there. So this one is very interesting. Again, it just shows the man woman thing is nonsense, but it's just it is a Nordic or an alpine forest with, you know, loads of kind of ferns, conifers, like proper evergreen trees everywhere, and then kind of berry fruits with a little sweetness in it. It's kind of mystical and magical. It's really well done. A love for me, perhaps, I wouldn't go that far, but as an interesting one, yes. I'm not the biggest lover of greeny fragrances, but this one is, I'd say it's pretty unique. You don't smell many like this. So yeah, that's Bracken Woman. Dear Woman. Now this is one of the I think it's really quite old, this one. Well, you know, as far as Amouage goes, and it's one of their more classic fragrances. I'm not sure if it's still about, to be honest, but it was an honour to sniff it. Hopefully one day I'll find some Dear Man as well, because I'd really like to smell that. But anyway, it opens with a lovely fizzy airy aldehydes with a pink rose, the peony kind of blowing over it. It's like an airy kind of breezy one. It's like a freshly washed laundry on a line, and flowers in a garden and that. After about 10 minutes, the heliotrope and incense start to show through. Still with that fresh floral soapy feel. Also, maybe the orris gives it a slight kind of, I'd say, candle waxy feel. It's quite an unusual texture. I'm not sure, but that must be the orris, mustn't it, really? As it grows, the rose and the peony with the iris do have a lovely kind of pink, almost lipsticky feel about it in there, with the musks in the airy aldehydes. It dries down like a pink floral, beautifully musky and aldehydic still. It does have that kind of lovely vintage floral of yesteryear. It's very comforting and really lovely kind of soapy snuggliness almost. It's one of them that you kind of say makes you think of your mum, whether she wore something or not of this. It's, yeah, 80s style kind of comfort, soft floral, vintage musky one, maybe even more. You know, your grandma would wear something like this. It's incredibly elegant and sophisticated, but it's not for them people. I really enjoyed wearing this, and it's kind of one you just wear on a warm, quiet day, you know, walking around in the sunshine. It's only that DNA gives you them memories of being quite young and that, I think. So that's Dear Woman. So Enclave, or Enclave, however you say it. This one opens to me with a mint patchouli and something quite heavy in the base. There's a nice tickle of spice and the dryness underneath the mint, the leather, and a kind of cashmere-y type note to me. Keep it quite heavy. It does have that kind of hot desert feel as well. You know what I mean? Like a stiflingly hot day and a kind of baking sand and all of that. But the rose adds a little touch of sweetness in there, and the mint is like a bright spearmint, which kind of, it works all really well together actually. Nothing kind of dominates, and that minty touch freshens up the heaviness as it develops the leather and a nice kind of very slight animalic feel. I wouldn't call it animalic or anything like that, but that comes through like a well-worn saddle, I'd say. As it gets to the hour, the kind of cardamom-y, saffron, ambery feel grows and it envelops the mint. Well, the mint does still linger on a little bit, but it's not so much there anymore. And there's also a touch of something a little fruity in the leather and the thick base, and then it's a little more obviously musky in the dry down and that. This one, unique. I'll give it a unique thing. That kind of dense, heavy, dry cashmere-y thing, it has been done obviously a lot before, we know that. But it actually works, creating that kind of hot, humid, deserty air. I've never been to a desert, I'm just presuming. And the mintiness, the opening is magical. I'm not a big mint fan in fragrance. Well, I've not really tried that many to make that comment, but It works in this, it really does work. And because it's more of a sweeter, fresher, brighter spearmint, it's really quite good. So yeah, that's Enclave or Enclave, whichever one you prefer. So actually I do have the other one of this, the Epic Man. I'm not going to rant on about this every single time, but it's what it's called. Now this opens to me with like a beautifully sweet saffron and warm spices. You get the leather and the incense are very prominent straight away, with a kind of smooth light resins, you know, like myrrh, that kind of styrax, that kind of loveliness. And the sweetness perhaps comes a little bit at this stage from the geranium, not too sure, and obviously the resins. And there are some sweeter spices, and also what starts to come through quite quickly is the more aromatic notes that add a nice freshness and a nice kind of a very unique touch again. And as it develops more, it does get fresher and more aromatic. The resins in the oud also kind of move up with a warmness. So again, there's that nice contrast there. There's also something, I'm not sure where it comes from. I'm thinking maybe the frankincense or the saffron, or even a bit of lemon in there. But there's a nice sharpness that kind of cuts through it all, and it makes it really quite enjoyable. The dry down of this one is kind of, the patchouli comes through more, but the resins and the saffron really start to shine more with the spices and the smooth leather. And you don't get, right, don't be scared, it's not animalic, you know, things like cumin and what have you. And the castoreum is not particularly rough or dirty or anything. It just adds a bit of a kind of cozy warmth there. And the aromatic notes kind of fade out after a few hours, and you do get, with the leather and all them notes, there is still a little hint of greenness. So this one, again, quite unexpected. I mean, it's not spectacularly wow out there, but it's nice. Although it smells, familiar is the wrong word, it smells like something you may have smelled. But again, there's so many different kind of aspects to it. Not quite, but it's easy going. For an Amouage, it's very easy going, especially with the notes that are in it. It's actually very pleasant, and no need to be particularly scared about it. Well, that's on my skin. So anyway, yeah, that's Epic Man. So Epic, well, this one to me, it's kind of going through it in a bit of detail and kind of going over it. It opens with like this lovely kind of dry cumin, a little bit, it's not dirty, and like a sweet rose. There's also like a very powderiness there, whether that comes from the rose or another kind of floral, not too sure. And it's sweet and it's just pleasant, a nice contrast really. And then there's a kind of a beautiful little bit of bitterness, a little bit of kind of green niceness, and mixing with the black tea that starts to come through, which is really, really nice. With there's also in there some smokiness. It's a very kind of Amouage one. And then the base, you get kind of a smooth resinous warmth from it. But I wouldn't say anything kind of leaps out massively. This is a very nicely blended one. It's like a sweet pink rosy tea, with the resins, the pink powder, and the kind of spices nicely there. And as it develops more, you kind of get a little bit of a hint of the woody oud and the woods, and the dry spices kind of grow a lot with the rose and the musks. It's like a kind of pink, beautiful, spicy rose at this stage, and you get the hints of the bitterness from the tea. And it just dries down like lovely and powdery, kind of rosy still. The woods, the smoke, and the vanilla and the musks kind of make up the kind of rest of the fragrance. This is, I suppose it's not really what I'd expect from the colour of the bottle, but this is actually a really nice one. It's not out there crazy or anything kind of wild, but it all works nicely, and it's I suppose you could say it's predominantly a kind of rosy, spicy one, but not generic, not like anything you've smelt before, but it doesn't go there. It's a very nice one. So yeah, that's Epic Woman. Then we have Fate Woman, and this one opens up with a gorgeous narcissus and citrus, with warm spices and a kind of just a general warm but kind of sharper floral fragrance. You get the benzoin coming up quite early with the tiniest bit of castoreum, again just adding a warmth, nothing too funky or overly animalic. And the lovely woody incense, again a little bit smoky, grows through it all. There's kind of a peppery spice coming and going as well. It has a slight vintage lean, to be honest. Obviously with all them kind of traditionally kind of floral things and that. And the benzoin and the vanilla keep it smooth and make it a little more, you know, on the modern side. And there's probably a little more of the sweetness comes through again as it develops from the rose, but I wouldn't say it's a rosy one. And I also think, I mean these are not listed, but there's some cloves and citrus still in there, and it's quite stunning actually. It is quite a magnificent fragrance, this one. It dries down with a little more of the castoreum, again not dirty, it's just that warmth of it. The resins add their own sweetness in there with the benzoin and the gorgeous musks, and the incense give it all these little facets and different textures and lifts. And after many hours it kind of becomes more vanilla, still with the florals there, still with them clovinesses there. And it's, to me, this one is, it's a little bit Shalimar, a little bit cocoa. You know, it's not really like them, but it's them kind of that style of fragrance. And I'm growing to love these kind of more vintage ones more and more. But this is an Amouage, isn't it? It's not a straight up one like that at all. It's got the spiciness, you know, the incense and all them different things. So yeah, this is an absolutely gorgeous one. That's Fate Woman. Next, I'll do it the other way around like I've been doing it. We've got it. Figment Man. Now this one opens gorgeously with the licorice, the wormwood, and the immortelle, and the smokiness and the spices. There's also tiny hints of kind of in the background. There's, you know, a sparkle of the orange and freshness and the sparkle of orange and that, and maybe a bit of the ginger. It then kind of flips a little bit as the ginger and the immortelle and probably a little bit of cumin give it this kind of almost ginger biscuity kind of thing, like a really kind of warm ginger biscuit. And then the immortelle slightly changes to become a little more greener, and the frankincense again adds that bit of freshness, and the cumin for me gives it that little bit of extra warmth. As it develops more, the ginger and the licoricey notes give it's all quite of a savoury kind of sweetness there, but it's still there. And after a couple of hours it sweetens up, and you get a bit of a touch of the rose perhaps shining through, which is I think where the sweetness comes from, and more of the orange, and the licorice, the cedar and the musks kind of lie under it more. And that's how it kind of stays as you go into the drying. A bit more of the kind of cedary. I'm actually wearing this one now. A bit more of the cedariness, the licorice. It's sweet, but not in a gourmand or a sugary way. It's just the natural sweetness of the things like your licorice and your woods and things like that. And this is quite a good one. So overall, this is quite again not too challenging. It's quite an easygoing one, and it's really nice. The kind of pleasantness of the if you like licorice, wormwood, you know, all them kind of anisey kind of notes, it's really good, and the spices add to it all. It's quite a dry fragrance, and the dry down is really quite lovely. Again, I'm not sure I've smelled really anything like this one. So that is Fate Man. Right, now we've got Figment Man. Now this one opens with a sweeter geranium and a kind of fizzy pink pepper with a smooth vetiver and quite an earthy feel there. There's also a tiny but not too noticeable at this stage castoreum vibe, Just more kind of a moist animal hair, you know, like a badger that's been rolling about in wet soil or something like that. The citrus and pink pepper do lift it nicely though, with the vetiver giving it a nice kind of fresh, almost gentleman vibe. Maybe, you know, some fella walking his badger, wearing tweed as they both kind of walk through the mud and the soil. As it develops, there's a kind of greener patchouli, and maybe more of a touch of this kind of pissiness. Again, it's not anything to be scared of. It is quite prominent, but it just seems to mix very well with everything there. It's definitely an interesting one. And there's also a smoky, like, pleasant iris and vanilla, I think, in there, which just gives it this kind of smooth sweetness. Again, these aren't listed, but it's what I get, like a smooth, you know, that kind of almost linen-y kind of iris with a bit of the sweetness there. There's also after a couple of hours, it's about the smooth woods and the patchouli and the kind of pissiness, the kind of dirty animalic touch. Again, it's not too much, does fade back, and the sandalwood and the guaiac are very elegant in the base, and there's even a kind of creaminess probably coming from the woody sweetness in there. This one, I've wore it on some hot days, I'm not going to lie. Probably, do you know what, it worked. It wasn't awful, it wasn't too much, it wasn't too skanky or sickening or anything like that, but it probably is better for the cooler days. But somehow this dank, wet, soily earthiness mixed with the slight pissiness, I suppose, like, you know, you're walking through somewhere like here and some, you know, some foxes or badgers or whatever that have decided to relieve themselves kind of in the warm, moist heat of the day. It's really interesting. It's not one I've ever heard spoken about really, but it's something. Would I want 100 ml of it? No. But this would be one I'd actually think I'd reach for sometimes. Really good. Anyway, that's Figment Man. Now next is one we don't really hear anything about, and I don't really know why, but that's Gold Man. Now this to me opens with a gorgeous, like, beautiful incense and maybe a touch of ylang and jasmine, and a pretty prominent lily of the valley as well. The gorgeous smooth resins and warm civet sit nicely under it. It's very rich and ambery with the musks. The civet and the lily kind of add this gorgeous kind of coziness to it all, and as it grows it definitely does have that kind of golden smell. So maybe there's definitely some ylang in this. I mean, it's not listed, but who knows, and maybe some mimosa mixing with the amber. Yes, as well, it's compared to a very famous one, and it does smell a little bit like number 5, with the patchouli, the musks and the civet giving it that kind of vintage glow from the base. It's not exactly the same, but it's that style, and it will remind you of it, I think. The sweet myrrh and the frankincense give it a kind of little edge there, and after a couple of hours it becomes very smooth with a slight beeswaxy texture to me, and the smell with a kind of soapy feel, and everything is still kind of really silky, like a golden dressing gown or something like that, with a slight kind of touch of that citrusiness, if I could get that out. Could be frankincense, maybe there's a bit of elemi in there. I mean, I'm not an expert, can only smell what we smell, can't we? And the muskiness, and it stays long into the dry down with that kind of golden, spicy beautifulness. It is really an absolutely gorgeous fragrance, and for me, somewhat underrated. I don't know why people don't talk about it. Yeah, it has a Chanel No. 5 vibe, but you wouldn't, people would call that a gendered one or whatever. It's very, very good, this one. Underrated, kind of vintagey, classy, just gorgeous one. So that's Gold Man. So now we have the kind of one of the new ones from the new range, and that's Guidance. Now this opens with an amazing kind of osmanthus, like a juicy pear drop. It's sensational, the opening. The lovely sweet apricotty osmanthus and sweet pear just they are delicious and kind of mouth-watering. There's also a nice kind of creaminess, probably from the sandalwood, but it's not sickly cream. It just makes the fragrance creamier. And there's a tiny touch of something a little mineral and salty under there. Could be the ambergris with the woods, I suppose. And it has a lovely rich texture that I can imagine there's comes from the resinous kind of frankincense and the other resins in there. And at this stage it makes me kind of think of them juicy pear drops, and that's kind of the star of the show. The osmanthus keeps coming through, and it brings a lovely muskiness. Now the osmanthus isn't too sharp, it isn't too leathery, it's got that kind of juiciness to it, and it makes me want to bite myself. It's quite, you know, like a chewy sweet. And then as you sort of go into the dry down, it's a little kind of apricotty sandalwood with the sparkle of the frankincense and the musks kind of lingering through it all. Now this could be one of my favourites from them newer ones. The newer line, I'm not going to waffle on too much because otherwise it's gone forever, is more approachable than you'd expect, but don't get me wrong, there's still interesting fragrances. Why the price went up quite so much is anyone's guess. But yeah, this is amazing, and when this is in the discounters, I'm not going to lie, I'll buy it then. But at that price, no. Although it is that good, it really is that good. It's just a bit out of my range. It manages to not be overly sweet or anything like this. And I think when the first review I heard of this, you know, was they kind of chuck them out very quick, don't they? The person reviewing it didn't kind of wrote it off, because I presume because it was in like a peach apricot bottle, because it was sweet. But funnily enough, this became kind of the favourite from the range for a lot of people, didn't it? And that's of all genders. It just kind of shows what we watch and what we listen to. Look for a rounded, balanced view of people who don't have issues with their gender identity or sexuality or whatever, is what I'd say, because it's a fragrance for everyone, beautiful and juicy. Anyway, I'm rabbiting. That's guidance. So now it's on a woman. Now this opens with beautiful white flowers, a sweet green jasmine and lily. Over it is a kind of tartness of the rhubarb and the pepper, probably with a little bit of spice in there, that like lovely distinctive carnation. As it develops, the incense is very prominent, and the carnation and the spices move up, giving it again a little bit kind of, you know, classic feeling to it. The florals do kind of mingle with everything and wrap all the other notes around it, so it's not overly floral, it's not overly spicy, it's kind of very nicely balanced, and the resinous warmth comes up from all the resins. The gardenia kind of adds actually a deliciously smooth, biteable touch, and that mixes with all the other kind of silky white petals, and the incense does grow, and the frankincense adds like a little sparkle. Now it's not, again, massively complex, and doesn't change much into the dry down. Now obviously it's not the most fascinatingly interesting ones from the collection, but it's got that kind of beautiful Amouage take on a more vintage one. Maybe not as vintage style as the others, but it's interesting because it is beautiful. Now gardenia is not always a note I love, because it could be too big, but in here it just adds the perfect texture and the perfect kind of... The gardenia to me is like a big thick milky white petal, and that works so well with the spices and the resins. It's a really nice one. So that's On a Woman. So On a Man. Now this one opens with a gorgeous kind of pepper and elemi, and some kind of other warm spices surrounding it all. It's a nice mix of like black pepper and the citrusy smooth elemi, the little edge of incense, and the cedar sort of shining through already. Really, as it develops a bit more, I'm sure there's like a little mintiness and more of an aromatic kind of feel. Not sure where that's from, but yeah, it's also kind of... This one is quite old, but it's got a little bit of that blue fragrance that we're all familiar with about it. Don't get me wrong, I mean, it's got a lot going on. And the nutmeg and the spices add a warmth. It's not what you call generic or anything like that. It's pleasant. The pepper and the smokiness does make it stand out a bit more as well, and it dries down, smoky, pleasant. The musks in the tonka do shine through more, with the vetiver and the elemi still there, and quite a bit of patchouli started to come through, I think. And it does last. It lasts a very long time, and I think some of the sweetness that you get more further in the dry down could be a bit of the geranium. I think there's something like a clary sage in there as well, giving it that kind of aromatic sweetness. Sorry, trying to avoid the obvious bloody wind, because of course it's here. And yeah, it's actually yes, it's familiar. Yes, it's very easygoing. Yes, you could say it fits that kind of blue fragrance kind of thing that was going on. And that's obviously very popular. It's obviously very popular for a reason, because it was loved and whatever, and this is obviously like a very luxury version of that. So if that's your sort of thing, this will be the best kind of thing of that. So yeah, that's Honour. We then have Imitation. At the time of making this video, I don't have the male version. Maybe by the time I've got it done I will do, and that will be in there. But this is Imitation Woman. Now this fragrance is incredible. It's one of the fresher ones for me, and it opens a little bit pitty, if you like. The blackcurrant is quite prominent there. Is there a bit of a kind of, there's a greenness, wouldn't go as far as calling it minty, but there's that kind of greenness in there, and there's a lot of a lot going on, and there is a fruit in this, I believe. I can't remember what it is, but there's that little hint of the fruitiness with the blackcurrant, obviously a bit of citrusiness, and as it develops they all kind of open up more, if you like, and the blackcurrant stops being quite so sharp and it becomes more fruity, and the greenness balances it to make it smell quite natural. And there's obviously white flowers in there, again giving it this vintagey touch. And this is what Imitation is. It's supposed to be vintage meets modern, and the modern side of it is there's obviously the sweeter blackcurrant as it develops, the muskiness, the woodiness, but also there's kind of a sweet resinous base. I mean, this is an Amouage, isn't it? So there's a sweet resinous kind of vein running through it and in the base, and the greenness does kind of move back in place of these sweeter notes. There's a benzoin maybe in it, myrrh, you know, that kind of lovely smooth resinousness, and it lingers for a long time, and it stays fresh with a kind of balance of the sharpness and that warmth, and it's a beautiful fragrance. But I'd say it's not heavy, and the smokiness in this one, an incensey kind of touch, doesn't envelop it or take over it. They're just in there, so I think it works. Perhaps not on the, a scorchingly hot day, but certainly on a warm day it's something a bit different. And again, no one will have ever smelled anything like it. Now I like the opening, but that's my warning of what makes this one challenging. It is in your face intense, but yeah, then it smooths out and sweetens out. So that's Imitation Woman. So yeah, the most famous of all the Amouages is probably Interlude Man, and that's what this is, the Blue Beast. Now I wonder if it's famous because it's very big and very powerful and very long lasting, or people love it. Probably a bit of both. It is one you'd call a masterpiece fragrance. Hasn't always been my favourite anyway. This one opens with a kind of stunning sweet opoponax. It's like a sweet myrrh and ambery notes with a smooth bergamot. It's quite a lovely opening actually. And in the background is the pepper and the burning oregano. And at this stage it's got a sweeter feel, with all the richer notes being the most prominent, and the incense and smoky herbs sort of towards the back. The sweet beautiful resins and smokiness grow more and more as it develops with the patchouli, bringing and that burning oregano. Also with me, the pepper seems to be quite big at this stage. Maybe the citrus keeps it a little fresh, or that could be something like a little frankincense or something in there. And after an hour or so, it's continued to heat up and the burning woods get more and more, and them herbs, that burning oregano tends to take over. You kind of get the smell of singed woods and singed greenery and that sort of thing. But the resins do keep it, you know, pleasant and kind of manageable, and it does last a very, very long time, and dries down quite woody, resinous and smoky, obviously. Still with a kind of smoky greenness there, but it's much further back, so it's not so bad. And many hours, I mean probably the next day, or you know, you're talking 10-12 hours, you're left with a kind of gorgeous resiny, musky, kind of beautiful base. It's quite lovely. Now this one, oh, I wanted to like it. We'll talk about Black Iris, you know, at some point in this video, but we'll talk about this one. It's the oregano, it's the burning herbs that are not just unusual, but quite something, I don't know, niche, which makes this such a brilliant fragrance. But this minus them things would be quite gorgeous. And I do have a clone which is very similar without the herbs. Obviously it's not, you know, it's not the greatest quality or greatest kind of fragrance like this one, but that's nice to wear sometimes as well. So I do really like this one minus the herbs, and in the right mood it's a really gorgeous one to wear, I think, actually. So that's Interlude Man. So next is Interlude Woman. Now this is probably the first of the so-called women's range that I ever tried, and yeah, so this opens with a gorgeous dark sweetness. The immortelle and the ginger really kind of stand out at this stage. The kiwi sits nicely in the background, and that's really unique actually, isn't it? It also has a little sharpness in bits in there, maybe from the coffee, though I don't really smell coffee. I'm just presuming that's some of the sharpness really, and some of the incense. It all sits beautifully kind of in the honey, and that kind of lovely smooth texture with the kiwi and the immortelle still really singing. The base is kind of just smooth and resinous, nothing overly leaps out, it's just very beautiful. As it develops, it gets drier and a little more vegetal. It goes through this kind of stage, and the kiwi's still there, but it's not as fruity at this point. And maybe the greener feels come from perhaps the leather and the oak moss. And then after a couple of hours, the kiwi comes back again. It's still dark, but it's much juicier, with a kind of smooth honey and the resins all kind of there. It's very black actually, smelling wise, and in the far dry down it's almost a little black treacle licoricey thing, which is, oh, it's sumptuous, with a smooth woody resinous. Obviously there's the musk is there, and maybe hints of the immortelle still lingering there. Now this is stunning. Like it, Interlude Man, it's very unique, it's very niche would be the word. It's not one everyone's gonna love, and it's not one everyone's gonna understand, but the darkness of it, and that dark fruitiness, and the unique kind of kiwi touch, oh that's pretty, isn't it, gives it something really special to me. And obviously it kind of getting more licoricey makes me love it even more, because I kind of love that sort of thing. So yeah, it's a really interesting fragrance, and like I say, this was the first woman's one I smelled, and I thought, it's the first one that made me think, what the hell are you talking about, woman? These, I mean, fragrance has no gender anyway, but this is in no way, you know, you'll get your, I can hear it in my ear, but traditionally it leads it. No, there's no tradition in Amouage. There's no kind of traditional type scents. They're all just magnificent fragrances. So yeah, that's Interlude Woman. I'll stop ranting. So Black Iris, Interlude Black Iris, sorry, is the last one. Well, you won't know it's the last one I filmed, but it is, and this was the kind of one I saved, and the one I probably pondered and gone through the most. This one was obviously massively hyped when it came out. Strange to have a flanker, but it was what it was, and a lot of people said a lot of different things about this fragrance when it came out, which got the hype up. Anyway, let's get into this. It opens with a kind of the same dark resins and a little sweetness maybe from the violet leaf and the bergamot. The herbaceous notes are still there, perhaps a bit fresher, and I guess that's the rosemary maybe. The leather and the oud had a little kind of ruggedness in there, and the orris at this stage, it's a little bit earthy, kind of mixing with a patchouli, perhaps a little bit there as well. As it develops, I think the resins keep getting nicely sweet, even light. The frankincense in this one really does kind of add a sparkle over it all. After about an hour, that green dark herbiness is back. A lot of it I suspect is from the leather, and maybe a little kind of from the herbs as well. It's like that oregano's still there. Does it smell the same as the other interlude at this point? Not really, because the smokiness and the burning kind of thing seems to be what's mainly missing. The resins and the musks warm it up, and they're much richer to me in this. There isn't really a smokiness, like I've said, either in there. So after many hours, there's maybe a little touch of smooth orris, it's a little powdery and musky. So it's nice. The resins and the leather, the tiny bit of char in there now, and it kind of stays like that. The resins stay kind of comfortable and sweet, a bit, you know, like the original. And the char, like something has been burnt rather than something burning, if you get my meaning. So this one, disappointing. Look, it's good, it's Amouage, it's nice. It's obviously a flanker, it's not exactly the same. In fact, there's quite a few differences, but obviously it has the same kind of things that Interlude is well known for in there. But what it seems to be, to me, is they've took out the smoky burning bonfire herbs and the smokiness and that kind of denseness, and they've replaced it, and the greenness is, to me, more from the leather maybe than like oregano and what have you. Do I prefer it? Not really. So it's a bit green for me. I mean, this is by far probably be the longest to go through. Is it like what it was hyped to be, you know, with this lovely iris going through it, you know, making it like a diorama or something? Absolutely not. The orris is earthy to start off with, and like I say, maybe it's where some of the powderiness and what have you come from. It's smoother resin wise, maybe, but this is not what it was. It makes you wonder what people actually smell. I know it's all subjective and we all kind of have a different take on them. I'm not calling anyone wrong, but I wish I smelled what they smelled. Yeah, it is lovely, and this makes me a little nervous for the extrait, which I'm gonna smell. I'm not gonna buy a bottle of that. It's madness to them prices. But if it's smoother, which is supposed to be, with the, again, allegedly the greenness not just toned down but taken out, okay, as long as the smokiness is there. The smokiness is what this is made this famous, what its gift is, what its powerful kind of impact on Fragcon was. Or maybe some people like it because it was just extra strong, but that's what I loved about the original. And if I could design it, I'd make it, I don't know, does it need orris? Probably not, but just take out the greenness and everything else works perfectly well. Maybe a little greenness, but more of the smoke and the burning and the smouldering. But yeah, this has been a very long one. That's Interlude Black Iris. Next is Journey Man, and this opens with a rich kind of smooth tobacco and pepper. It's quite lovely actually, and the fresher aromatic juniper, cardamom and the citruses make it kind of stick out with a lovely kind of freshness in there. As it develops more, the cypriol adds a kind of greener, darker feel in the base, in the incense, you know, there's a little bit of smokiness. And it's mainly kind of interesting that the citrus zest and peel keep it fresh with them aromatic notes. They do kind of linger on for a while, and the vein of tobacco and cypriol and the rough leather give it a nice greenness in there. After a couple of hours, the greenness really goes with a muskiness and a kind of warmth for the pepper. The rich tobacco still sits nicely in it, And I also get maybe a patchouli mixing with the incense, which gives it a nice kind of texture and feel again. But it stays leathery and green, and it kind of, they go on long into the dry down with a bit of musk. This one, as you can see, quite brief, wasn't the most complicated of fragrances. I wouldn't call it the most unique of them, but it's nice. It's nice. It's nothing like, again, I remember watching reviews of this ages ago, kind of people talking about, you know, the spice trains on the Silk Road and stuff like that. I suppose a little bit, but for me it's more about the aromatic notes and the greenness and that. So yeah, if you like that sort of thing, worth checking out. That's Journey Man. So next is a Journey Woman, and now this one to me opens with kind of a dusty perfumed rose. There's no rose in this, by the way, and that mixes with an osmanthus and that thick waxy honey. It's just like a honeycomb more than like a rich honey. The tobacco sits nicely in the back with the greener cypriol. Now the tobacco isn't a kind of big scent, just it lingers there to me. And I suspect the fresher feel is the mimosa, the cardamom and the osmanthus, which again, nothing kind of leaps out of this one. And as it develops, the mimosa and osmanthus do start to get a little greener, like being in a lovely grove with kind of bees buzzing around making sweet honey. And there's a gorgeous muskiness that grows through it, and that for me is kind of my favourite part of this. The apricot also kind of comes in and out. It's weird, you kind of smell that more fruity thing as you get towards the end, and it dries down to a slightly medicinal, sweet, syrupy, fruity one with a kind of warm darkness. And obviously the honey is where the more medicinal kind of feel comes from it. This one, when I blind bought the huge stupid amount I did, it's my least favourite, but it doesn't mean it's not good. It's just like Journey Man, I think. It's not all that exciting or unique, but it is very nice, don't get me wrong. And it has similar notes actually through it, which is something I've not noticed with the others, but this one obviously goes in a slightly different direction. This is a warm kind of hug. If you're going to go on that spice kind of train idea in your head, this will be, you know, being wrapped in a blanket in the back on the way there, and the kind of beautiful soft smells of the exotic flowers and fruits. And it's good. It's just not mind-blowing. Again, similar to Journey Man, not the most mind-blowing from the collection, but both nice. So that's Journey Woman. So next is another very famous one, and one of the earliest I tried and made me fall in love. So it opens up with a lovely blackberry surrounded by kind of golden spices and cloves. Now this blackberry comes in and out through the fragrance. It's there, but it's kind of the sweetness in the background, I think, a bit. The resins kind of create this gorgeous smell of the Silk Road in my mind, because they're so luxurious and kind of that. And the honey kind of has a sensual veil all around it. You might also get kind of the little hints of what is the oud note and the patchouli kind of mixing with it all. But they're not really too prominent, really. It's not really an easy one, if I'm being fair, to pick things out. It's very stunningly blended. Think of a kind of stunning golden fragrance, like a precious holy fragrance or what have you. A golden cart of the best resins and spices from the Sultan of Oman. It's kind of a good way of describing it, I think. It's just one of them that kind of has that aura of, I hate saying it, wealth and gold and that. It fills the air with kind of beautiful sensual honey and the spices, and it's one of them you really want to nuzzle into. As it develops, the tarragon and the cloves and the resins give it a slight lovely anisey touch. And again, remember that blackberry? I think that's a little bit in there. And the cinnamon gives a kind of dark red glow around the ambery colour, like a sunset. The muskinesses and the patchouli come through me even more after an hour or so. And it dries down a little sweeter, maybe with a touch of cinnamon over the gorgeous resins, still with that honey smoothness. And then after many hours, that's gorgeous, isn't it? That's a bit like what it smells like, really. you get a kind of beautiful patchouli and it gets a little bit drier. Now this one, again, I said them words, didn't I? Described it as money, booyah, or whatever, you know, bling bling. But it does, it smells like a guy with lots of money, or a woman with lots of money, like a sultan who plays it subtle. Yeah, alright. There's no golden castles or diamonds, they're just someone you know by their walk, by their kind of gaits, that they have a lot of money, and it's gorgeous. That's Jubilation Man. So yeah, there's no need for me to make this extensively long. That's just end of part 1. Part 2 I think should be up tomorrow, and it's basically the rest of them. Obviously it's not, I don't have every single Amouage, I've not sniffed every single Amouage, but it's roughly split half and half. Have you got any favourite Amouages that you've seen in this side of the list? Are you expecting others? I mean, it's in alphabetical order, so you can pretty much guess what's coming tomorrow. Right folks, till tomorrow, bye.